Oh, good morning all, and thank you for attending. We'll move straight on. We have one apology for absence, which is our Treasurer, Danielle. And now I'll hand over to Angie to speak on the emergency evacuation procedures.
Thank you. Morning, everyone. There are two emergency exits on this side of the room and another two on that side of the room. So should the alarm go off, there is not due a test today, then please just exit the building through your nearest fire exit. Thank you.
Thank you, Angie. We'll move on to item 3, declarations of interests. I don't have any. Does anybody else have declarations of interest before we start? No? Brilliant. Okay.
None advised to me, Chair.
Thank you. We'll move on. We don't have any public access statements received for this meeting, so we'll move straight on to Chair's business, agenda item 5. So if I can just go through the usual. I'd like to confirm that this AGEC meeting is taking place as a face-to-face meeting. Unfortunately, due to the continued prevalence of COVID-19, we continue to have capacity restrictions on meeting rooms and therefore have had to limit the number of attendees and the entry of press and public. For this reason, we are recording this meeting for the public to view, whereas before COVID, committee meetings were not recorded. So if I can just do introductions now. My name is Councillor Paul Goggin. I represent Hartcliffe and Withywood Ward on Bristol City Council, and I will just ask the other councillors, starting with Councillor Wilcox, to introduce themselves, please.
Hello, I'm Councillor David Wilcox, representing Lockleys Ward in Bristol.
Councillor Early Brown, representing Stoke Gifford Ward in South Gloucester.
Councillor Richard Tucker, Weston-super-Mare, North Somerset.
And over to the other side of the room, John.
Councillor Neil Butters, Bath Avon South Ward, Bath North East Somerset.
Morning, I'm Robert Payne, Councillor for Weston-super-Mare Central, North Somerset Council.
Thank you, councillors, and I'll just ask officers present now to introduce themselves. We'll go around this way. I'll start with Angie.
Morning, I'm Angie Feeney. I'm the Director of Corporate Services here at Avon Fire and Rescue Service.
Good morning, members. Good morning, everybody. My name is Simon Shilton, one of the Assistant Chief Fire Officers.
Hello, my name is Jane Williams-Locke and I'm the Deputy Director of Corporate Services for Avon Fire and Rescue Service.
Hi, Tanya Nathan, Head of Procurement, Avon Fire and Rescue Service.
Claire Bentley, Head of Finance, Avon Fire and Rescue Service.
Okay, and then
Steve Gregory, Bristol City Council.
And Amanda Brown, the Clerk to Avon Fire Authority. And we also have the independent person, James Mason, here.
James Mason, independent person for the Fire Authority.
And I'll ask others that speak during the meeting to introduce themselves before they speak. Okay, the voting procedures that will take place today. I will ask members firstly for any votes against. I will ask for any abstentions, and then I will assume that all other members are in favour and are voting for, and we're just making that clear so that it comes out on the recording. So moving on to agenda item 6, which is the minutes from the meeting held on the 24th of November. For members, do we have any comments on the minutes? No? Fabulous. I will sign those and give those to the clerk.
Want to get someone to second them?
Happy to second them. Yep.
Thank you. Amanda.
Chair?
Neil.
It's just that I asked a question at the last meeting on page 7, which has been answered. I just wanted to make sure that got into the minutes. Is that
Yeah, we can do that for you, Neil. Are there any other points to be made? Okay, I will, following procedure, I will propose that they are an accurate record and
Happy to second them. Yes.
Thank you very much. I shall sign those and pass them on. So we'll move straight on to agenda item 7, which is the External Audit Value for Money report. And I think Michelle's here to present that for us.
Lovely, thank you. So, yes, I'm Lisa Hopton, Director at Deloitte. I'm here to present the Annual Auditor's Letter to the committee. So, the Annual Auditor's Letter concludes the audit and is a formal report we have to do each year. It's changed slightly this year due to the value for money changes. So this is a new report that you're seeing this year in a slightly different context. So this highlights a number of things. It highlights findings from the audit. It concludes our value for money work and also brings out the testing around significant risks. So in relation to significant risk, this is consistent with what was in the ISO 260. And in terms of what is a significant risk, it's an audit terminology, and actually every audit that we have under auditing standards, we have to identify significant risks. And that's just where we just need to focus our audit testing, and we report back to those charged with governance our specific findings and what we've done to mitigate and address those risks. In terms of those areas, what we've identified as significant risks are consistent with what we see at other local authorities. So again, nothing new or unusual in terms of what we've identified here. In terms of the value for money work, what we have concluded is consistent with what we concluded when we signed the audit opinion, and that is an unqualified opinion, meaning we found no significant weaknesses in your controls and procedures around governance. And we also haven't raised any recommendations. So in terms of the report itself around value for money, it's a positive position and nothing to highlight or bring to your attention. I probably wasn't going to go into the report in much more detail, but if you've got any questions, happy to answer them.
Thank you, Michelle. We'll move to questions. Councillor Wilcox.
Thank you, Chair. Reading through your report, you suggest that there are a number of misstatements that are in the accounts, and you say that there's only 2 of them. But can you say how many statements there are actually in the report to put that into context, so to show that they are minor things, please?
Yeah, so in terms of misstatements, what we always track to is materiality. So we calculate materiality, and every audit has a materiality, and we audit to that materiality. What I would say is the misstatements that we've identified are immaterial, so they don't have any impact on our opinion or anything like that, and we're happy that they're uncorrected, shall we say, because if it had an impact, then we would ask management to correct them, but we're comfortable that it doesn't have any impact. The accounts give a true and fair view with them uncorrected, if that makes sense. And I suppose in terms of what is there, it's not unusual to have misstatements. You know, we look at a sample population, so majority of auditors will have a number of uncorrected misstatements, so that's not unusual in terms of concept of an audit. If that answers your question.
Thank you, Michelle. Do we have any other questions from members? Sorry to look at you quizzically, Neil. I just thought you might have it. You looked as if you had a question.
I think, Chair, we're all struck dumb, rather, because it appears to be very good news. So, congratulations.
It is indeed. Thank you. Okay, and that report is just to note for members. So we'll move on to agenda item 8, which is the external audit plan. Thank you, Michelle.
So in terms of the external audit plan, we're currently drafting the plan at the moment, and the plan is to circulate that outside of committee at the beginning of March. What I would say is from discussions we've had in terms of understanding the business, understanding changes at the authority, we're not expecting anything to change. It feels very much business as usual. There's no fundamental changes in accounting policies. There's no changes in guidance or accounting standards coming up. So we're expecting the significant risk areas that we identify in every audit to be consistent with what we've identified in the past. We're also expecting materiality to be consistent and calculated on a consistent basis. So there's nothing for me to bring to you that is unusual or concerning, but that paper will come circulated outside committee in March.
Thank you, Michelle. Does anybody have any questions for Michelle on that? Councillor Wilcox.
Yes, please. On page 5 of your report about the internal... I'm on the wrong section, sorry. Pardon.
No, not a problem. Did you have an unanswered question from the previous? No problems at all. Okay, thank you very much, Michelle. And again, that's just for noting. So moving swiftly on to item 9, which is the internal audit update and audit reports. And Vicky, you're presenting these, are you?
Yes, I'll take you through the first progress report. So as introduction, Vicky Gould, Internal Audit, Senior Manager for RSM, the Fire Services Internal Auditors. So we're presenting our progress report and 3 audit reports to you today. So to start with, our progress report just sets out how we're getting on with delivering the audit plan. So there are 3 reports delivered today and undertaken since the last meeting. We've completed our transformation audit and we debriefed that last week. So we're just, the report is going through our QA process. That will be with you at the next meeting. And our follow-up audit is starting in the next few days. There's also a note to say that we would usually present an audit plan to this meeting in line with the work programme, but due to the tender process, that's not come to this meeting. So section 2 just sets out where we are with the audit plan, as I just described, and then any changes. We discussed previously around a pensions audit that we were originally going to do in December, but due to the significant changes in process, that will potentially be done next year by whoever your internal auditors are. We have a sector briefing, but we haven't attached that because we didn't want to take up too many papers, but you can request that from Amanda if you need it. I'll just pass over to Mark to introduce the training report.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Mark Jones from RSM. I'm the partner with RSM and act as the Services Head of Internal Audit. I just wanted to say a few brief words about the training audit before Vicky goes through the detail, because you'll note in the papers that this is badged as an interim audit report, and we just wanted to set the context about why we're bringing you an interim audit rather than a final report with an opinion as we normally would. You'll see from the report that this audit was conducted largely in the autumn of last year, and we received further information last week from the service around some of the information that you have on competency assessments that could be seen as a good evidence of mitigation around one of the weaknesses in the report, which was around mandatory training, which Vicky will cover in a little bit more detail. And what we felt with in discussing this with management was that until we fully understand this information that you have on competency assessments, we're unable to give an overall assurance opinion. So what we wanted to do is do a little bit more testing to understand how these competency assessments are made, what lies behind it, and how good the quality of the data is and how that's reported upwards before we give that overall assessment. But what we felt was that it was useful to bring this report to you in its interim stage just for transparency purposes, so you can see where we are now, what the findings are, particularly in relation to the training side that we have audited, so you can ask any questions around that. But what we will do is bring a final version of the report with an assurance opinion at the next meeting when we've conducted this extra little bit of testing on the competency framework. So just wanted to make it quite clear where we are with that, and we've agreed that process with management. Vicky, do you want to take us through the detail of the report?
Sure. Yes, so as Mark described, the scope has been slightly expanded from the original scope, which was around development of training plans. It was around monitoring of training, attendance and compliance, the new simulation assurance programs that have been implemented, and also the promotion process. So now that scope has been extended to competencies, which we will cover in the next few weeks. So take the detail as read, but we have currently raised 3 medium and 4 low actions from the audit work that we've undertaken to date. The medium actions are around the training, data and monitoring, and just making sure that any non-attendance or non-compliance with training is reported and escalated. However, obviously you have got the issues with COVID in the last few years that has impacted on the ability to attend training or be released because of sickness, etc. Driver training, which I think you all know about, we've talked about at previous meetings, and you're aware of the services strategies around driver training. And also then a little bit about reporting through to People and Culture Committee. We could see reporting through performance, but the Constitution in terms of reference state that there'll be training reporting through People and Culture Committee, which we couldn't see had happened recently. So we'll take any questions or whether management want to provide an update as well.
Thank you, Vicky. Simon, was there anything you wanted to add on this? I believe it's under your remit.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just thanks for RSM for raising some of the points in terms of the audit, and also for ongoing conversation around further data submission to enable an accurate report to be provided to members. I think just a couple of things there that Vicky's referenced, and also in the audit report itself. You'll note that Vicky gave a description around competencies and the number of times that firefighters have to demonstrate competence. Firefighters have quite a number of competencies. What we do focus on those that are of the highest risk categorisation, and within the report there are a number of indices when perhaps a firefighter hasn't been able to attend a training event. That doesn't necessarily mean that firefighter is not competent or unsafe. There are a number of other checks and balances which we're working to provide information to the auditors to demonstrate that is the case. And of course we also report back to a PRSC committee with regards to our maintenance of skills is the most standards is what we would call it. That is also another measure of assurance around collectively the percentage of number of staff that are competent in their role and demonstrating competence. There are a number of varying factors relating to that. We've had, course might be cancelled, crewing may not enable someone to be able to attend a course, sickness levels, we've had obviously COVID isolation, so all of those bits and pieces that we're just walking through. In relation to the driver training, we do have a plan in place in relation to driver training. It does take approximately 12 months to get a firefighter through from initial application through to qualified as driving a HGV vehicle under blue lights. So there is no quick fix with that one, but we have got plans in place to be able to shorten that time frame, but also ensure that there's some further early identification of those personnel to be early enrolled onto a driver training course. So that's one measure that we've put in place. And also in relation to the findings around reporting back to People and Culture Committee, I am pleased to say at the next People and Culture Committee we will be presenting a report, and that will be a quarterly training report on some of the aspects that you've covered in your audit. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Simon. And obviously the HGV issue is a national issue as well. It's not just something that affects the fire service. As we've heard over the months, the cuts because of COVID to the tests have affected HGV drivers nationally. Okay, I'm going to open to questions now to either Vicky, Mark or Simon. Councillor Butters.
Thank you, Chair. I was just thinking about how we've been supporting the ambulance service and whether there might be any distinction in the training required for each. Presumably there's no likelihood or even maybe not even a possibility of anything happening the other way around. Supposing we were short of fire engine drivers, but there happened to be a surplus of ambulance drivers.
Simon, do you want to comment on that?
Yes, I think, Councillor, if I understood your question, it was around skill shortages across the workforce. Yes. So there are a number of ways in which we manage skills shortages. So we have our succession planning strategy that we review every quarter. We look at what our crewing mechanisms are, our staffing numbers, which then leads into our recruitment process from there. We also monitor through the most standards as well the relevant skills, and we've got a number of other steps in place, such as overtime arrangements, such as our degradation plan, to make sure that we do have the right skills in the right place when we need them.
Sorry, I was just going to follow up. The distinction between ambulance drivers and fire engine drivers, are ambulance drivers HGV drivers as well?
Generally not. They're like commercial vehicles, ambulance drivers. Of course, all of our frontline appliances are classed as a heavy goods vehicle.
Neil, do you want to come back on that?
Well, I think that answers it. So there wouldn't be any possibility if we were desperately short of a fire engine driver for an ambulance driver to step in. So they couldn't do that unless they happen to be qualified, particularly.
No, that's correct. So it would be a different licence categorisation, but of course, our colleagues in the ambulance service are also facing similar pressures for ourselves as well.
Councillor Wilcox.
Thank you, Chair. On page 5 of the report, we talk about performance monitoring, and most of the stats are allocated about the fact that they weren't entered into Firewatch correctly. What steps are the Fire and Rescue taking to make sure that the data is put correctly into Firewatch, please?
Yep, so that has been identified by the training manager as a result of the audit, and there are a number of mechanisms around ensuring that the accurate data through our resource planning unit has access to ensuring that transfer of information from booking a course fits into Firewatch. We are just going through on the transformation programme a relaunch and a reintroduction of a new version of Firewatch, which hopefully should be able to improve that.
Thank you. And I've got another question. I couldn't see any reference to things like diversity and IT compliance training in the training report. Where's that going to be covered, please?
Okay, so that wasn't initially part of the scope of the audit. You'll see later on in the papers there is some reference to the DICE audit that has recently taken place, and hopefully some of the points in there that you've raised will be able to be covered from that area, particularly around diversity monitoring across our workforce, career progression in diversity monitoring as well. So hopefully that will be able to support and help that level of improvement.
Thank you.
Councillor Butters.
Sorry, could I just seek any further comment? I was slightly concerned that there was this finding of 227 instances of expired training during last year. Anybody wish to comment on that further?
Yes, thank you, Councillor. I think that was what I referenced earlier on, is that within the report you'll note when I said about risk-critical training, one of the key areas is breathing apparatus and a breathing apparatus assessment. Some of the findings within the audit report are not necessarily considered to be risk-critical. And instances is where someone might have missed a course date, so not been able to attend that course, and as such, for various reasons. So we put an element of flexibility and look at each case as well. So it may not necessarily mean because they've missed that course date that they're not safe in undertaking their role, or they've run out of competency or qualification, because there are a number of other factors and measures that are taking place with regards to local training records. For instance, they may have recently demonstrated competence through attendance of an operation incident and wearing breathing apparatus as an incident, as an example, or they might have undertaken local station-based training through local station instructors rather than a centralised mechanism. So there are some checks and balances, but that's the area that we are providing further clarity to our internal auditors, so that we can provide a more accurate report.
Yeah, could I just come back slightly? Yeah, I mean, that's all reassuring. I'm just wondering whether it might be worth considering having as a target to reduce that, because it's still quite a large number.
Yep, certainly, which is what we report back to PRSC with regards to the most competencies, and that is all within there. So we have a performance measure within our most competencies. We are running at about 96% across our workforce that are in competency. Of course, there are always going to be variances because of things like staff absence. Some of those records where an individual might be due to leave the service as a result of retirement, it may go beyond those dates that are quite a few varying factors to those 233 instances Matt's mentioned in the report itself. But we do performance measure the workforce competency through the PRSC.
Thank you. And I think I'm right in saying that one of the reasons this is an interim report is that the scope has been widened, if you like. And also, it's so that members could have an update rather than waiting for the meeting on the 18th of May, which is when the full report will come. Thank you. Okay, any further questions? So we're asked just to consider that.
Can you move on to the next report?
Yeah.
I think if we take them all collectively at the end.
Thank you, Amanda. Okay, we'll move on to training. We'll move on to fleet management now.
Thank you, Chair. So the next report is fleet management. So this was looking at policies and procedures in place, looking at fleet maintenance, inspections, disposals, and capital planning. So we've given a reasonable assurance opinion for this area, and we've agreed 3 medium and 2 low actions with management. The first one is around having more formalised, approved fleet policies that align to the Constitution and the capital and purchasing requirements set out in the Constitution, because currently the fleet policies were in draft and weren't necessarily central documents. So that's something that's being worked on alongside the introduction of the new tramman system, which will address a lot of the issues that we found around manual workarounds and paper records, etc. Another one which was around data was around being able to report on maintenance compliance, which again will hopefully be improved with the new system, and then also just a re-looking at the parts management policies and approach to make sure that they're resilient. So I'll take any questions on this report.
Thank you, Vicky. Members?
I've got one. The Wi-Fi in the garages option note seems to be interesting. The fact that it wasn't thought necessary to put Wi-Fi in the garages so that the parts manager couldn't actually update his database when actually in the garage. That seems to be a bit of oversight. Is that going to be changed rapidly, please?
Simon, are you aware of that one?
I'm not actually, Councillor, aware of that one, other than we've recently upgraded all of our infrastructure for Wi-Fi at all of our premises with significant investment. So hopefully I can come back to you on that one, but hopefully that would resolve the challenge that we had. I'm not sure whether that was a legacy aspect or whether it's current at this moment.
Chair, I believe that Tanya can help with that question.
Thank you. Tanya?
Hi, yes, there is, our IT provider is looking at bolstering up Nova Way. Is an issue that we're well aware of and that we're looking at solutions. So it's an ongoing project, I guess, to work out what's the best solution. And as Simon says, there is a wider look at we intend to look at all our Wi-Fi provision across the estate as well. Okay.
Councillor Wilcox?
That's fine, thank you.
Do we have any other questions on the fleet management report? No? Okay. We'll move on to the key financial controls then, devolved budgets.
Thank you. Yes, so this is our annual financial controls audit. So you will have been aware of the work that's been ongoing around the financial improvement plan and now the devolved budget programme. So it was looking at the governance, looking at the engagement, and we tested some of the pay budgets as that was one of the areas that's fully rolled out, and also looking at future deliverables of the devolved budget programme. So we gave this one a reasonable assurance opinion as well and agreed 4 actions with management, but they were all low category and low risk. So I think it's just worth noting that when we look at other fire authorities, this having a devolved budget programme is probably quite rare, so this is good practice that we've seen across the sector. But when you look at the wider public sector, this is something that is more normal practice. So it's really aligning you to that, and it's really helps with effective budget management. So the actions that we've agreed were around having more devolved budget reporting up to committee level. Currently, due to the system limitations and not all of the operational budgets being devolved, that's not in place yet, but there is a plan, and that will make the process more effective. And also then that having those budget reports available to budget holders and budget managers so that they can go and look at them as they like, rather than waiting to receive them on a monthly basis. That's what we tend to see across the wider public sector. Around budget sign-off, so that budget holders are signing up to their budgets. They know what they've got to deliver, they know what their responsibilities are, and having that formal sign-up. Again, this is just explaining some of the practices that we see across the wider public sector, where this is more embedded, and then having a timeline so that you can monitor delivery of this and make sure that all the deadlines are met for the final rollout and business as usual of devolved budgets. Yeah, so take any questions or any feedback from Claire if she wants to.
Thank you. You didn't have anything to add, Claire? No. Okay, questions from members? Wilcox.
Yes, please. Page 9, the risk area of budget setting, that budget holders weren't aware of their budgets. That's quite concerning for me, the fact that they could either underspend or overspend their budgets. What steps are we taking to make sure that they are informed and signed off on them, please?
Claire, did you have anything to... We are a little limited not having Danielle with us today. I didn't know if you had anything to add, Claire?
Yeah, so we do have sign-off from the budget holders who are currently Senior Leadership Board on the overall budget. So this is actually talking about individual budgets, which is part of what we're looking at in next year's devolved budget process. So we do have the sign-off, like I say, from SLB, who are currently our budget holders, of the budget overall before it goes to the Fire Authority for approval. So that is, awareness is there. I think this is about the wider budget managers that we're talking about, and that's part of the next steps of the process.
Thank you, Claire.
Thank you, yeah, that's fine.
Do any other members have questions? No? Fantastic. Okay, so we're asked to consider those 4 reports, the progress report, the training, fleet management, key financial controls, devolved budgets. I think we've all asked questions on that, so I think we have considered them. And we can move on to item 10, which is the update on internal audit management actions. And I think it's Angie on this one.
Jane.
Apologies, it's Jane.
Thank you, Chair. This report is for noting. If I can ask members to turn to page 106, Appendix 1. The summary table gives you information around the 2020-21 audit plan, and we had 36 actions that came out of that audit plan. 20 are now complete. 1 has been superseded. 9 have requested an extension, which has been approved by SLT at the January meeting, and 6 are yet to be started, so they're not due for completion yet. We also have an update on the 2021-22 audit plan, and Vicky has already told you about some of those recent audit reports that have come in. So in total, we have 11 actions, and 2 have been completed around performance management, and 9 are yet to be completed because they've only just come in. On page 107, Appendix 2, this gives you a summary of progress against those actions for 2020-21 and you will see in red text the agreed extension dates given, approved by SLT at the January meeting. Other than that, unless elected members have any questions, this is just for noting and to give you information around those.
Thank you, Jane. Just on page 107, you've got this action will be signed off as complete at the February SLT. I'm presuming that happened.
The February SLT is next week, so yes.
Thank you. My bad. Okay. Do members have any questions on that? Councillor Wilcox.
I've got one question about this. It's about the business continuity planning and the business impact assessments. The one that's medium. It doesn't mention a period of time for when you review these plans, and I think they need to be reviewed on a reasonably regular basis, and it would be good to have a statement about how often they are reviewed, please.
Simon or Jane?
I believe they're reviewed on an annual basis. We are carrying out a review as we speak due to the recommendation from internal audit, and they're going through each one of those as we speak. So hopefully that will be completed by June, and then it'll be on a rolling annual basis, I believe.
Thank you, Jane. Simon?
In relation to business continuity management, we also have, we align it kind of to the business continuity week. And so that helps us sort of generate that reminder to local managers to review their business continuity. We do have a programme of when they're due to be reviewed as well, so we've a list of those, and the business continuity team do work with local managers to make sure. We're just introducing a testing programme as well to ensure that we can test those business continuity plans. And the other bit, I've kind of forgot what else I want to say there. It'll come to me in a minute, sorry.
Thank you, Simon.
That's great. I'm gratified to learn that.
Fabulous, thanks. Councillor Butters.
Thank you, Chair. Diversity and inclusion seems to be lagging behind slightly in one or two respects. Anybody wish to comment further on that? What we can do to catch up?
Simon?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. So we've had to take a pragmatic and professional judgment, and there are advisory recommendations. The DICE team has lost 50% of their capacity, so we've had to make a professional judgment around the capacity of the team really was. We go through a recruitment process, hence why you have seen that there's been a movement of dates to recognise that. Yeah, 2 to 1. Yeah.
But also, Councillor Buzzers, I hope that through the kind of commentary that you can see that it's not standing still, it's just slower the work. Okay, thank you.
And that's now currently been moved to the end of September? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Okay, do any other members have questions? No? Okay. We are just asked to note the progress made against internal audit recommendations and management actions. So that's noted, and we'll move on to agenda item 11, the Corporate Risk Register, which is Jane, not Angie.
Thank you, Chair. Again, this report is for noting. If I can ask members to turn to page 118, Appendix 1. You will see a summary of 3 months monitoring of each corporate risk, and you will note that 4 corporate risks have increased in their risk rating in January, and 2 have decreased in risk rating. The ones that have increased, I'll concentrate on. CRO1, which is on page 1 121, you will see that it's risen from 12 to 15 in its risk rating. And this is around our sickness and return to work interviews. So there is a slight increase in the risk of that. Currently, this has been impacted by the pandemic, so that's why we've slightly increased that risk rating. The second one is CR08, which is financial capacity, and that's on page 128. And again, that's risen from 12 to 14. And this is regarding resources within the team. Again, a team member has left the team, and there is a problem. Recruitment is a issue for us within the service at the moment because we're public sector, and it's very difficult to attract new candidates into the service because of the demand outside. Yes. The next one is CR11, which is financial systems on page 129, and that has risen from, I'll just have a look at that has risen from,
13 to 18.
13 to 18. And again, this is around the SLA service level agreement being reviewed with and updated with Bristol City Councils, and the option appraisal in respect of the new financial services model. So that one's risen. Again, on page 133, CR14 governance has also risen in its risk rating from 14 to 18. And this is around, again, capacity within the team, recruitment of new team members into that team, and we are trying our best to recruit backfill for maternity and other vacancies within the team. So I've risen that slightly due to the monitoring that goes on in the team around internal audit reports, the corporate risk register, and everything else that the team has to do around the governance arrangements. So other than that, if members have questions, that's the end of this report.
Thank you, Jane. I think Angie might want to add something.
Yes, thank you. If it would just kind of help members, again, going back to page 118, the risk register is obviously a live document, and it goes kind of up and down kind of on a regular basis. So just to update in terms of financial capacity, as Jane has indicated, that primarily went up because we had a leaver in our accountant. What I can now say is that we have an interim already in place for that role, and we have now permanently recruited to that role with a starter, I think, in a couple of months, isn't it, kind of, Claire? So that one, I think, at next review, will now move further again. And the linking item, which is the financial systems, because the accountant was leading on a particular piece of work about our future financial model, that will also then pick back up at pace. Now we have both an interim and a new member of staff. Also to help on the governance one, we have also now recruited a head of governance a head of, corporate assurance and continuous improvement team. And they will be starting with us in a couple of months. And also we have now recruited for our maternity backfill. So whilst recruitment remains a challenge, I think, for this organisation, but also a lot of organisations at the moment, just because of the way that the labour market is, I'm pleased to report that we have been successfully recruiting in those roles, which will then see a reduction to the risk. Also a further clarification around sort of CR12, which is around cyber security, where there was an indication of a reduction around that. That was considered by our service leadership team at a recent deep dive. But again, that kind of fluctuates, and I have the overall view of that. And it didn't then reduce, it remains at 20. So therefore, the last time it was reduced was when we spoke to AJEC, when we did that wholesale review of our risks following an internal audit suggestion and recommendation. So just to do those further clarifications and updates for members. But as then Jane says, happy to take any further questions.
Thank you, Angie. I've got the cybersecurity as a 18.
Yeah, that's just what I've explained there, which was there was a discussion at SLT about reducing it, but I have the overall on that, and so it hasn't reduced. It remains at 20, so that's just a clarification on that one there. And therefore, the last time it reduced was some time ago when we did that big whole-scale review.
Thank you. And just to note, from what I can see, that even the ones that have gone up, they're all lower than the initial risk scores that were assessed. Do members have any questions they'd like to ask on that? Councillor Wickles?
Yes, thank you, Chair. CR06 about ISDN lines. How many ISDN lines do we have, please?
Tanya?
I can't tell you a number, but we are looking at getting somebody in to do a survey of all our ISDN and PSDN lines because we're aware of the 2025 deadline, shall we?
Indeed, yes, it's a huge issue for not just Avon Fire and Rescue, but loads of other people as well. So, a question about CR13. On the top table, where you describe all the risks, it's 18, but actually in the main table, where you're actually talking about the risk, it's 20. What's the real score? Because you do say the risk has been reduced, so I think that might be a typo.
Apologies, it probably is a typo.
So if I can just clarify that. So CR12, which was cyber security, has remained at 20. CR13 was reduced to 18,
yep.
And that was because SLT reviewed where we were with the infrastructure programme and all the investment that the Fire Authority have put into that. And given the progress on that infrastructure programme, decided that we are at a point of, not our ultimate, because we are still rolling it out, but at a point where we could reduce that risk because of where we are with our kind of servers and our networks and our improvement in that area. So the CR13 did reduce, the cyber security remained at 20.
That solves that one then. Thank you.
Angie, can I just check the papers then? So I'll be saying for the minutes an amendment to page 132. Is it the yellow column on page 132? Should that be 18?
No, so lost CR13, which is on page 132, is correct.
Yes.
CR12, which is on page 130, the current risk score should remain 20 rather than 18.
So the amendment is to page 130?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Just clarifying for the minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions on that? No? Okay. And again, we're asked to, this time, to review the register and consider the controls and mitigation in place to manage the risks and consider whether the committee needs any further information in order to be assured of the appropriate management of these corporate risks.
Unless there's any concerns that any members want to raise and add? No? No, I just think note the reports.
Thank you. Okay. Moving on to item 12, which is the PSAA invitation to become an opted-in authority for external audit services. And I believe it's Tanya to present on this one.
Correct, thank you, Chair. A few months ago, the authority received a letter from the PSAA inviting us to opt in to the new procurement process, I guess is the best way to describe it. So the PSAA is quite a tongue twister now, PSAA have been appointed or reappointed by the Secretary of State, the current contract with Deloitte and that was put up into place by PSAA several years ago expires on the 31st of March 2023. So the PSAA are going to be going out to market and doing a new tender exercise and appointing new external auditors to those that decide to opt in to that exercise. So as part of the process to opt in, we actually have to have that decision recorded at our members, so the AFA meeting this afternoon. So just to put it in context of why it's at this meeting as well, is because in our constitution it does actually say that the AGEC committee are to make recommendations to the authority on the appointment of internal and external auditors and agree audited terms and engagement and fees. Now, obviously, we're not at the stage of appointing an external auditor, but it's all part of the same process, so that's why it's come to this meeting as well. I'll just, in summary, some of the points about why we should... so the recommendation is to appoint and to opt in to this, but I'll just go through some of the reasons for doing that and some of the risks perhaps we might want to talk about as well. So PSAA is obviously appointed by the Secretary of State. They are the expert in this arena. They've got the skills, the expertise around appointing and going out to tender in this area. They will also carry out the tender exercise, so they'll write the specifications, they'll write the terms and conditions. They agree the scope, which I think is nationally recommended for external auditors anyway. I'm sure Michelle might be able to explain that a bit more than I can, to be honest. And then they then independently appoint an external auditor to us if we decide to opt in. So one of the benefits is that obviously it's an independent, so that's quite a good point from auditor perspective, and also from our perspective, the skills and the resources, etc., are carried out externally, or from a purely selfish point of view of a procurement team that's quite strapped at the moment. That's quite a nice thing from our perspective. There's a number of others that are listed in the document, which I'm sure you've read through. Just touching on financial implications, obviously at the moment there aren't any, because this is all about opting in or opting out of this process, but there are indications in the market that there will be increases. So from 2023 we are expecting an increase, but once we know if we decide to opt in, then we'll know who we're going to be appointed with, and we'll know our fee rate, so that will all come back to this forum again at that stage. I think some of the risks, I guess, are that it is a number of... So currently there's about 400 people that are in the current system, and at the moment there are over 100 that have opted in. So we are in the mix of it all. Brings great benefits because that means we get savings and the skills and the expertise, etc. But of course we're one voice in quite a number. So although there's consultation, etc., there is a risk that our voice might not get heard in there. There's also, once we've opted in, we're in. That's it for 5 years. We can't change our minds halfway through or decide to depart. There are contractual requirements within that mean that, if we're not happy with our auditor, etc., that we can go through a particular route to address those, and they will work with us to address that. PSAA will work with us. And then also, because it is independently appointed, the risk is obviously we wouldn't necessarily want the appointed people will be happy with the appointee. Again, there is a process about how we mitigate that or talk to them about that, which I've explained in the document in more detail. So I think those are the main risks and advantages. And obviously, as I say, what we would like is to have approval to opt in to this process because the benefits outweigh the risks in our opinion. But happy to take questions.
Thank you very much on that one. Just highlighting another one of the risks is the one in item 6.3, which talks about if we don't opt in, we'll have to appoint our own external auditors by March next year, and that does open us to quite a lot of risks in terms of fees, etc. And also the fact that some of the bigger auditors may not wish to bid for work because they'll have enough, I suppose, within the PSAA, considering, as you said, 100 people or 100 organisations have signed up for it. So that's one to highlight. Angie, did you have anything to add on this one?
Nothing further to add, just conscious that Danielle isn't with us today kind of as treasurer. We have had conversations kind of in advance of this, and she has kind of read this form, and it is both her recommendation as the treasurer and my recommendation to go with the PSA route, partly for the reasons that have been highlighted, and also PSAA do our arbiters in terms of fees. So actually, if our external auditor wanted to put up fees, they would have to go to the PSAA and they benchmark that against their other kind of auditors, which is very difficult for us to do locally without that. So, and there are also very strict requirements for when we need to have our auditors in place in order to audit our accounts. So the timescales would be very difficult, if not impossible, for us to kind of go alone if we didn't opt in to this arrangement. So just to put forward what I know is also Danielle's recommendation with reference to our financial requirements.
Thank you. And I suppose it's a little bit like getting a fixed deal on your energy prices. You know what you'll be paying for a certain amount of time.
Hopefully slightly less problematic than that at the moment, Chair, but yes, I get the spirit of it.
Thank you. Members, Richard, you had a question?
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Tanya. And it's really just in connection with the PSAA range of the scheme locally. I'd just be interested to know what other nearby authorities, fire authorities and councils are opted into it. This came up at North Somerset recently, so that would be interesting to know how that sort of dovetails really.
At the moment, I'm only aware of the numbers that have decided to opt in, not the names. I'm aware of the current names, so there is a list on their website. I'm happy to send you the link if you'd like it. I think it's in the paper as well, but I'm happy to do that so you can see who opted in now, and then I would expect many of them to opt in again. But at the moment, we don't have a list of who has opted in to this particular scheme, unless, Michelle, I can see your hand going up.
So I suppose I've been at a number of audit committees, and this has been on probably the last, all of them sat at the last round of meetings, and I would say that everybody that I've been to, they've all opted in. I think to go it alone is risky. I think the paper sets that out and would be costly. So yeah, in terms of that concept text, we've seen majority, if not all the ones I've sat, have opted in.
Thank you all. David?
Thank you, Chair. I have the uncommon pleasure of being on Bristol City Council's and West of England Combined Authorities Audit Committee, and they have both opted into the PSSA scheme.
Thank you. That's interesting to know. Do any other members have any questions or comments on this?
Yeah, I was just wondering if we didn't opt in and we had to appoint our own auditor ourselves, what sort of liability would that be on our officers' time? Have we got any ideas on that?
So resources-wise, we would have to carry out a full tender exercise and procurement and put specific contracts, etc. in place. So generally, a procurement of this nature, about 6 months in time, and probably at least one procurement officer for several hours, but it's procurement processes aren't just about the procurement team. They involve evaluators and the market, etc. So you're putting pressure on the market at the same time as the PSAA are, because they'll be going out to market, we'll be going out to market, there'll be lots of different... So the risk is that, of course, some suppliers would only opt for one or the other. They won't necessarily bid for everything, as well as our internal resource pressures.
Thank you, Tanya. And having been part of the procurement for, we'll be talking later on the internal auditors, I can vouch that there is a lot of work to be done, and I'll be thanking Tanya later for our work on that. But yeah, it's quite intensive. Any other members have questions? Councillor Butters.
Not so much a question, but just as an observation, the more this debate has gone on, it seems that we would be taking an undue risk, I think, by not going for this. We'd be clearly swimming against the tide, and we could be inviting criticism down the line and trouble.
Yeah, I do tend to agree. My opinion is that we should opt in from all the evidence that I've seen. But obviously I'll be asking members in a second to confirm that. Does anybody else have any questions? Sorry, Richard.
Just a quick comment in terms of the PSAA list that they take from. Is it 16 companies they look at and they're all on a national pre-tendered list? Is that how it works?
No, so that was the internal audit. Well, it's easy. I know we've brought 2 papers today, so it's quite confusing. So, no, that external audit process will be completely open through find a tender national programme, not through a framework.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? No? Okay. Well, we are asked to approve the recommendation for the Fire Authority to become an opted-in authority by joining PSAA's national scheme for the appointment of external auditors. Am I just right, Amanda, in that if we do approve that now, this will then come to the full authority this afternoon for approval there?
That's right, yeah. So if you can propose, get someone to second, and then we vote, that would be great.
Okay, well, I will propose that we do... sorry, Councillor...
No, I'm happy to second.
You're happy to second. Okay, you're in there before I'd even made the motion. Yeah, I'll propose that we do approve the recommendation to join the PSAA, and Councillor Butters will second me. Do we have any votes against that? No. Do we have any abstentions? So that is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay. Yeah, sorry, Simon just wanted to come in.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, apologies, Councillor Wilcox, for your question around the business continuity, but I have recalled the third point that I wanted to make just for reassurance is, in terms of business continuity, we've also just developed a training package for managers, and I've just launched that across the service as well, so that was the third point. Apologies.
They always come back eventually. Thank you, Simon. Okay, we'll move on to agenda item 13, which is just for information, and it is the date of the next meeting, which is the 18th of May 2022 at 10:30, and currently scheduled to be in headquarters. So I will propose that that is the next date. May I have a seconder on that? Thank you, Councillor Wilcox. Okay, do we have any votes against that? Any abstentions? Okay, that will be the next meeting. Now we move on to agenda item 14, which is the exclusion of the press and public. And I resolve that the public be excluded from the meeting during the following items of business on the grounds that they contain exempt information pursuant to Schedule 12A, Part 1 of the Local Government Act 1972, and that in accordance with Schedule 12A, Part 2, Paragraph 10 of the Local Government Act 1972, the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. So I'd like to propose that we now go to a confidential session. Do I have a seconder on that, please? Thank you, Councillor Butters. Any votes against? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you.